if you clicked on this video without getting offended by the title, then good job. If you got offended by the title, then you probably won't get anything from this video. Your mind is already made up on the subject and I won't be able to change it. If you're in between where you're like, what does he mean by that? Then I feel like you'll get a lot out of this video on how to escape wage slavery and how entrepreneurship is modern survival. Now, I've talked about this multiple times in the past. I'm not anti 9 to 5. I'm not anti working a job. I think it's very useful. I think it's an absolutely incredible path to go down. If you want to climb up the ranks and get a high paying job and you love that job, I don't see anything wrong with that at all, right? And I have the argument that I'm going to present. I also worked a 9 to 5 for a good amount of my life. Just putting that out here. I'm providing a perspective that is rather polarizing on how to escape wage slavery, and it always splits people into two camps, and you don't have to fall within either of those camps. You can agree with both sides. So let's just dive in. You are a slave, and I'm a slave. And slaves don't know that they're slaves if everyone else is too. Because just because the slavery that everyone knows and hates of the past isn't a thing anymore, doesn't mean that slavery doesn't still exist. I'm talking about mental and financial slavery here. Slave, noun, a person who is forced to work for and obey another and is considered to be their property. The key word in that definition is force. And force can have many different definitions and contexts. So for the sake of this video, we are going to use this one. Force, noun, strength or energy as an attribute of physical action or movement. In other words, there is something that is pushing you to do one thing over another thing. And the stronger that something is that is forcing you in the other direction, the more of a slave you are. Because a slave of the past, they could, if they knew they were slaves, it was just normal then. They didn't really, maybe they were labeled as a slave, but it was just a normal thing. But they could, if they wanted to, run away, but they would be forced back because of death. They would run out of shelter, they would run out of food, they would run out of water. They were slaves, not only because they were chained and held there by force, but they were also forced because their survival depended on it. So with that said, survival plays a huge role in modern slavery. And as we've discussed earlier, human survival is not only physical. The physical survival that we experienced in the past is mostly like automated now. It's a lot easier. We're much more comfortable in many parts of the world. But human survival is mostly conceptual. Humans survive form, self, ego, or identity, or however you want to label a distinction within consciousness. So let's go over some examples. The first is political ideologies. If you identify as a Republican or a Democrat and your beliefs are challenged, then you will feel a physical threat response because of that. Your survival feels threatened because you consider that idea or belief system, political belief system, as a part of who you are, your concept of self. It's a psychic body. It is not your physical body. It is an idea. The next example is sports teams. Have you ever noticed that some people get visibly angry when their sports team loses or someone says that their sports team sucks? Especially if they have money on the line, because that's also tied to their survival. And your team spirit for that team makes you feel like you are a part of something greater than yourself. It is your spirituality. That is a very good thing. But it does not have to hurt your mental health. You can detach from it. The next example is your identity. Are you a coffee snob? Are you a health expert? Are you just a productive person that's studied like productivity tips and tricks? If someone tells you to stop drinking coffee, how do you feel? If someone tells you that the keto diet is the best diet, how do you feel? Do you want to educate them on what you know is best or that you have experience with? The ideology that you have attached to your identity and feel the need to survive? Even when you know that blanket statements don't apply to every single person on earth across different cultures with different resources? And if you're a productive person and you move to a new location, how do you feel? Your routine just got destroyed out of nowhere. You were surviving the form that is your routine through effort, energy, and habit. You need a week or two to acclimate to the new location, yeah? And this is where I'm often a slave, is to my routines or getting into a structure or a flow in life and then something threatening that and me feeling not very good because of it. And I sometimes choose to stay inside and do my own thing rather than go and experience something that I know would be good for me. So the last example here is just religious ideologies, because even if people say that they don't want to convert you to their belief system, they are still going to do it unconsciously because they're conditioned to reproduce their identity. Reproduction is a part of survival. And if we survive on the conceptual level, then any form of communication is trying to reproduce who we are with the ideas that form our concept of self. That's how you create other human beings. Your parents did not only birth you physically, but they created you mentally with the ideas that they shared and communicated to you. Do you start to see why I am so big on the creator economy and understanding that is because you're creating selves. You're creating selves around the world, and that changes human behavior and what people do with their lives. And that's what leads to evolution in a positive direction. This is also why I'm very big on education, self-education, skill acquisition, all this shit. It goes much, much, much deeper than just, oh, you can make $10,000 a month. And this is also why there are bad parts of the creator economy, because mental phone slaves often end up unsuccessful because all of the ideas that they're consuming creates who they are. So if they're watching all of this degenerate information and memes that tell them they hate their lives and they can only afford certain foods, or that, oh, like, it's so funny, I have 10 cents in my bank account, I can't afford chicken nuggets. And so they think that's the standard that they set for themselves in their mind for who they are, because they program themselves to be that way rather than surrounding themselves with the digital people that they want to become like. So with that, we now need to understand how society is a pyramid scheme of attention. So if something is not given attention, it does not exist. And if it does not exist, it must be given attention and should be able to be given attention in order to not only come to life, but to survive. So if you stop paying attention to who you are and feeding those thoughts, then you'd experience death, ego death. That's what you hear. If you're familiar with spiritual teachings and meditation, that's what they're saying. Stop giving life to the negative aspects of just what you don't want to pay attention to. And so this brings two realizations. The first is that you are contributing to unconscious destruction. Because how do mega corporations grow and thrive? They start small and they form a power hierarchy over time. Fewer people with more power at the top and more people with less power at the bottom. The top tier of the hierarchy, which is the company itself and the executives and the board and all of that stuff, they can only do what they do because a plethora of people are giving attention to the tasks, visions, and values from the bottom up. There is a pyramid of attention going on here that allows the people at the top to not have to do or pay attention to any of the things under, at least from like the technical details. They can pay attention to the big picture and help manage it. But at the end of the day, like, they're not in there doing the work. And so these mega corporations would not be able to survive if the attention, that's the root of it, right? You could say, oh, they're just workers. What do you have to do first in order to work? It's pay attention. Attention is the root of all of it. So the company would collapse if there was no attention to build that company. Or focus. Get my book, The Art of Focus, when it comes out end of September. And so often people aren't paying attention to what they're actually paying attention to. They don't see the depth behind their actions. Because at the bottom of the pyramid, it's low skill grunt work like a cashier at McDonald's. And by nature, it is impossible for every single person that is at the bottom to rise up to higher and higher levels simply because there's less people. There has to be the attention filled from under. And so this is why I see many 9-to-5 jobs as a stepping stone to doing what you want, or even job hopping until you get to where you want. And so the problem is that the people at the bottom are unconscious of what they're actually contributing to, like how McDonald's workers probably don't understand or care that they are poisoning millions of people across the country, because the cashiers, they probably aren't giving attention to the nutrition knowledge to educate themselves on what it actually takes to be a healthy individual. And if they did have that education or health knowledge, then they probably wouldn't be working at the McDonald's there. They would be doing their own thing, working as a nutrition coach or working under a nutrition coach or whatever other jobs fall within the health and fitness domain. They could go after that with the knowledge that they have because they paid attention to the things that gave them that knowledge. Another example is how military programmers write the code that kills millions of people on the other side of the planet. Or even a web designer that creates websites for a person that scams people. And of course, there's a quote for this where it's just, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So that was the first point, is that you are contributing to unconscious destruction. The second point is that you can bring a conscious vision into reality. The only way to escape is to build your own thing. But this is increasingly difficult because most people are more than just wage slaves. They're slaves to many different things in their lives, whether it be addictions, their phone, and other things like that. It's taking you 20, 30, and even 40 years to dig yourself into where you are now. It's going to take some time to dig you back out. So the way out is to become a value creator, which I've talked about before in the value creator video, because true value is creative, and creativity allows for change and emergence. It allows for new levels of the hierarchy to be created and for you to create your own hierarchy to advance within. If you don't understand this whole hierarchy thing that I'm talking about, go and watch Niching Down is Terrible Advice for Smart People. And so if the only value that you have to provide is physical and not creative, then you will get stuck in manual labor jobs. If you are not creating anything with your mind, that is. Because that's what all the people at the top are doing. They're creative and they're using the power of their mind to create things that are valuable and distribute that to other people. So as we always talk about, you have to push the boundaries of the unknown, learn and discover new potentials along the way, acquire the skills necessary to build a purposeful product, solve your own problems so you create a solution of true value, and start a business as a vessel to actualize your vision for the future. I talk about this a lot in the One Person Business Model series. So with this whole slavery thing, I'm tired of both sides of the argument. One side is like, all 9-to-5 workers are slaves. And then the other side is like, no, it's okay. You're not a slave. Don't worry. You're perfect the way you are. Both are wrong and both are right in some cases. Because when people say this online, both are trying to maximize the engagement they get. They don't zoom out and think if people are actually slaves. And most people don't want to face that reality. A published idea without depth is a disservice to humanity. So the fact of the matter is that 95% of 9-to-5 workers are slaves, and your feelings do not matter here. If you do feel threatened by someone talking to you through a screen, then maybe there is some truth to what I'm saying. You would only feel threatened if your survival were at stake. So look inward to see what you're hiding from, because most workers are the literal definition of a slave. If you cannot stop showing up to work for your survival and have no skills to open other options immediately, and you are the property or employee of a certain company, that's a slave. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't be happy. Everyone is a slave in one way or another, and we all have waves of happiness in our life. If happiness is the feeling we get when our attention is distracted from the vast unhappiness in the world, then slavery may make some people happier than non-slaves. Because you can be happy at points in your life while being unconscious of the problems in your life that would make you unhappy until you have to develop the skill to fix those problems to become happy again. And so again, I'm not here to demonize 9-to-5 jobs. I see them as a stepping stone. I also see beginner level business models as a stepping stone, like freelance work, agency work, coaching businesses, and sometimes digital products. They're all a stepping stone in your life's work, and they can easily enslave you. Not all people that do this are slaves, but the people that don't pivot and evolve beyond them start to become slaves to them. And so with this, a personal brand, however, like a creator, the topic of that, the umbrella in my eyes, is not a business model. It is how you display your character in the digital world so that you can distribute your value through that character as if you were in the physical world. Your personal brand is you, and you can get enslaved by the business model that you choose to operate from with that personal brand. So now, with that covered, we need to talk about how entrepreneurship is modern survival. So let's take a look at this graphic. And you can see here there are a few things. On the top, there's the unknown, which is where you get good dopamine, which is uncomfortable. On the bottom, there's the known, which is just a cycle of cheap dopamine and comfort. And in the middle is where meaning and fulfillment is found. That's at the edge of the known, or the edge of the unknown. And so the white line represents employment. The dotted line represents entrepreneurship. And so you can see that with employment, you get that initial good dopamine because you're making progress, but then the work starts to become more and more repetitive. You know what you're doing. You probably won't get promoted. You don't advance up the ladder, and things just remain the same for the rest of your life. And you quickly go into the known and just a cycle of cheap dopamine. You become a monkey in a cubicle. But with entrepreneurship, you go up and down and up and down, and you have much more control over the balance in your life, the good dopamine to cheap dopamine, and the skill required to stay at the edge and find meaning and fulfillment, because your psyche is wired to hunt. Imagine our ancestors walking by a bare bush every day. It doesn't serve their future at that time, but one day it grows new berries. Somebody walks by it, they notice, and that novelty causes excitement. They either gather the berries or remember them later so they can survive longer. And so when you get stuck in a 9-to-5 or freelance work or agency work or any of the new digital 9-to-5s, you start to live in the eternal known. You can't make new discoveries in the known. You can't hunt. You get bored, depressed, and see life as meaningless because the only dopamine you get is from superficial sources. You never take risks, push into the unknown, and discover new knowledge, tools, and potentials that raise dopamine levels in your brain. You must evolve. Entrepreneurship is the path of uncertainty, like slashing your way through the jungle. You are required to learn skills that aren't taught in schools. You are required to be okay with failure, rejection, and slow progress. You are required to learn from your mistakes, show up again tomorrow, and push until you strike gold. As an entrepreneur, you hunt for your survival by gathering knowledge, creating a valuable product, and putting it in front of people that could benefit from it. And as I've discussed, my path for doing this is to start a personal brand as the foundation, solve your own problems in the real world, which revolve around health, wealth, and relationships, distribute your findings, opinions, and beliefs via writing, start with a freelance or coaching service and get results, sell a physical or digital product that requires less time invested once your audience grows, make a hefty income in 2 to 4 years with persistence and iteration, and then finally expand your vision for the future and build whatever you want to get there, which could be software, spaceships, whatever you want. And this is the entire process that I give with templates and education inside of digital economics. So now we have to talk about the balance of skill and opportunity, because I'm a slave to many things in my life, but I would like to believe that I've escaped wage slavery. Because if my business got wiped from the face of the earth, I could still create a product or service that someone else needs, call, email, advertise, and spread internet content to drive traffic to that offer, make 5 to 10K a month, and improve that with the data I've gathered. So why can I do this, but most people can't? It's because over the past 10 years, I've learned graphic design, web development, digital art, Photoshop, Illustrator, copywriting, psychology, marketing, sales, video editing, audience building, advertising, product design, course creation, idea generation, lifestyle design, bodybuilding, nutrition, social media, and more that most people struggle with. With $0 to my name, I could create a product or service and sell it to someone else that I know that needs it. For example, I could create a service that teaches people how to build landing pages that sell. So I could charge $1,000 to $2,500 for a 4-call boot camp, depending on how I want to structure that offer. I would target new businesses that have a full website, because that isn't even close to an optimal way to sell a product or service. Or I would target students who want to learn a profitable skill outside of employment. Or I would target creators that want the first step in monetizing their brand outside of platform revenue. I would spend 3 hours in the morning DMing people and writing marketing content online. And the thing is that people will read this and try to replicate it, which I recommend you do, but you have to understand that at this point, me starting over again, I have 10 years of experience. I know the little nuances of all of this stuff. So when you go to school, your mind is narrowed on the select few skills that will make you employable or replaceable. And with every skill that I learn outside of school, I can spot multiple opportunities that allow me to make an income outside of a job. And this effect compounds. With the skills I've developed, I can create 50 different products that I know will be profitable within the first 6 months of my efforts, simply because I've invested my attention in myself. So if you want to do this yourself, let's go over the steps for how you're going to do that. Step 1 is drown in new information to program your mind, because most people are drowning in information that has nothing to do with their goals. They don't have a vision, goal, or problem to interpret situations through. Because the chances are is that you've already read life-changing information, but it didn't register in your awareness because you didn't have a goal to apply it to. You could have read a book that was absolutely life-changing to another person, but then you go and read it and you're like, it was kind of a good book. It wasn't that good. And so with the goal of escaping wage slavery at the top of your mind, you can schedule a minimum of 20 minutes dedicated to consuming information that will help with that goal. You can buy books, use your Audible credits, save podcasts, follow new social accounts, and add new videos to your watch later on YouTube. You can get out of your house, Have a notes app open on your phone and write down your discoveries as you immerse yourself in the information. You will feel the dopamine in your brain on the hunt for a better life. Now, the second thing you can do is study purposeful businesses that you aspire to build. So now that you have a consumption habit of gathering good information, you need a more practical goal to apply the information that you're learning. So what business do you build to escape wage slavery? You take mental note of the apps and activities you incorporate in your life on a daily basis. You look at who you follow and the businesses they've built. You buy a book or course on a specific business model that interests you. You must discover a business model that you feel pulled to build, one that you can become obsessed with. It doesn't really matter which one it is. An emulation is what helped me build my first successful business. It helped me identify blind spots before I even got to them. Get in the habit of studying people you want to be like, downloading and purchasing everything they have to offer, and making a mind map of everything they have online. Social media profiles, websites, landing pages, email sequences, products, services, lead magnets, books, everything. Reverse engineer what allows them to be successful. If you don't know what to do after that, I do not know what to tell you. And then step number 3 is to become your own dopamine dealer. My friend and I were having a discussion the other day, and I'll paraphrase what he said. You know what's wild? I remember asking you why none of your friends take action or follow in your footsteps. I get it now. People are dopamine junkies, even businessmen. The people that don't take action don't know how to replace the dopamine they are getting from their current habits with business. So they either don't start or quit after a week because they couldn't get their hit. And this made me think back to realize what actually worked for me. I was constantly chasing the good old dopamine, but in the right direction. So here's my advice. Hold a loose idea of what you want in life: money, success, peace, fulfillment. Start building something, anything that will make that a reality. I would, of course, recommend a one-person business because it is long-term. Learn what you want to learn the most to help build it. Skills, courses, websites, logos, whatever, so you get your dopamine hit. Don't be afraid to change what you're doing if you get bored. I attribute my unique success to shiny object syndrome. I failed at 7 different businesses and learned even more skills along the way, just because they sounded interesting to me. And what most don't see is that I wouldn't be here without those failures. I had to become a modern Renaissance man in order to make this business model work. The skills I learned with each failure compounded into better opportunities. My tweets wouldn't be the same without copywriting. My web pages wouldn't be the same without web design. My profile picture and branding wouldn't be the same without Photoshop art. The list goes on. Replace the habits that keep you enslaved with habits that will break you free. It won't happen immediately. Be okay with that. If you can stay on the path, you win. That's it for this video. I appreciate you watching. Digital economics if you want to productize yourself. 2-Hour Writer if you want to learn a valuable skill in the modern marketplace. You can find links to both of those in the description, along with free tools, newsletters, etc. That's all I got. Have a good one. Peace.